Welcome back, my Crit Crafters. I'm Drew Brown. Today on Crit Craft, and I have a very special project for you. Today we'll be heading to the forge to show you how to make your very own homemade knife. A little disclaimer, remember that for this you'll be dealing with a lot of dangerous tools, so remember to wear the proper equipment for the job, like gloves, an apron, and the like. Just make sure you're safe. Anyway, let's head over to the forge. So firstly, take a piece of steel square stock and heat it up in the forge until it becomes hot enough to cut on the chisel. Cut it by holding the metal on top of the chisel and hitting it with the hammer to apply pressure and dig into it and repeating it like a lot. This is called a hot cut. After you have your piece of the steel cut, you're going to have to start flattening it. In a similar process, you'll be heating it up and hitting it with the hammer again. This both flattens the metal and strengthens it by compressing it. This is by far the longest of the process. It takes like 2 hours. 2 hours of just heating it up, smacking it, heating it up again, and smacking it again. Remember to keep your forge hot, so it's okay to take a little break and mash up some more coal to throw it on the forge to keep things hot. Continue to shape the metal until it is mostly flat. After it's to its appropriate thickness, the knife begins to take shape. After this, you can finally leave the forge and it's onto the belt grinder. At the grinder, you should start by removing all the scale, which is all the burnt on carbon and coal dust. So basically, once you start to see the silver, that means you're good. Our blacksmith told me to note that he left some of the scale on because he was trying to go for a more rustic look. So if that's your thing, keep some on. We had some trouble spots in the knife, so we took it over to our wheel grinder. There's a lot of sparks, so again, be sure you're wearing proper safety equipment like gloves and goggles. The next step is the quench. This involves you evenly heating the blade before dipping it into oil. We use 2 people for this process for the purpose of reducing fire risk. Quenching compresses the crystalline structure of the steel, making it hard but more brittle. After that, we moved on to the tempering process. It reduces the brittleness caused by hardening. This is probably the easiest part. All you have to do is put it in the oven at 400 degrees at 20 to 30 minutes. It's as easy as making a pizza. After your knife is done tempering, we took off the excess carbon from the quench by hand. This involves a lot of hand polishing with the sandpaper. Use a high grit sandpaper as it not only removes the carbon, but it also polishes it at the same time. Then you cut a handle onto some wood. We use some sassafras, but any wood will do. We will then glue it to the metal blade part of the knife. To do this, we use a 2-stage epoxy which sets in 5 minutes, but had to cure for a couple hours. You might want to get some lunch or something while you're waiting. Finally, you're going to need to make the handle a little more handle-like. We used the belt sander again and grinded it down and rounded it out so it's a little easier to hold. We then sanded it down with some sandpaper just to give it a little more polished look. Finally and lastly, we gave it some stain to make it have a little bit of color. And there you go. It's a long process, but it's really satisfying to see the final product at the end. There's nothing like seeing something that you made yourself be finally completed. Well, it was a long process, but we made it, and you have a super cool homemade knife to show off. So what did you think of this craft? Any suggestions for the next craft? Tweet me at CTV Goofing Off with the hashtag CritCraftin. Until next time, I'm Drew Brown, and this has been Crit Craftin.